money-wise, all big-time players, but they all had some recent injury history. How did you reconcile that?
Well, a lot of it had to do with how we handle the off season, how we handle training camp, and quite honestly, there's a couple of maybe that we would have had a much more difficult time signing had there not been a prior injury, and we felt we felt with those guys there's always that risk evaluation that's measured in, and we felt pretty good about it, and you know we feel like in our program, we'll be smart enough to understand their workload, all the things to try to get them healthy to the field. But there's always some risk with that.
How did you feel just filling these needs? I mean, you had, some significant needs, and boom, 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 you fill them with those three guys.
Yeah, it's not a process where you say, if I don't get this player, then we'll go get this one or this one. You really kind of identify exactly who you're looking to get. I would say we felt good. We felt good coming out of it. We felt like our team got better from a football makeup standpoint, toughness, and we'll continue to hopefully use that momentum as we get closer to the draft and then even after the draft.
Coach, it seems like Evan Ingram's really embracing the Joker role. Does he fill that need for you, and how does he fit with that role that you have?
I would put him in that category, that family. I think that he is someone that has those skill sets. I think one of the things that helped us in the process of him making a decision was that role, and maybe you could talk about it, but then historically speaking, having had players like him, I'm excited.
With Hufanga, what does he bring that was missing last year?
Well, he's a great communicator. He's super intelligent. I think his experience, and there is a toughness about the way he plays. Sometimes you can be a second responder, sometimes a first responder, and he appears first a lot on screen. And there's a style to how he plays. And look, part of that style, because he's so physical and so quick to support, he's had a handful of injuries, but there's a toughness to his game, and you guys will like him. Something about him when you meet him and you visit with him. So that was a big get. We felt excited about that.
Was there a common thread with him and the Greenlock coming over from the 49ers that attracted you to those guys?
I think that was a little bit more coincidence. Yeah, I mean, there were positions, they were kind of must positions for us, and yet to fill two of them from one team, and I think one may have helped the other too. Sometimes that can happen, but I can't speak for them. If there is a common thread, though, those two guys are tone setters in how they play.
Sean, this is probably the way you're used to operating during the draft because you had Drew for all those years and with your quarterback set. Do you appreciate, then I talked about the NFL train, seeing who people think you're getting at 20, knowing how many things can happen before you get there?
I appreciate not being in that quarterback market. It's difficult. We were talking last night, George and Greg. Obviously there's a lot of pressure to get that right, and when you don't have it right, it's one of those positions where it can kind of consume you as an organization. And fortunately, a year ago this time we were able to do that. So yeah, 20. We're just getting into the heart of the meetings now, so the mocks or what have you would be stuff we'll throw into a computer.
How much is running back and how does that compare to looking for that quarterback last year?
Yeah, I would say you can draw some similarities in that, and yet generally it's easier to find that position than the QB. There's just more access to finding answers to that position, and it's much, I think, more challenging at quarterback.
In terms of this year with the draft so deep at running back, was that maybe one reason you haven't signed a running back at this point in free agency?
Yeah, I think that factors into it, but I also think we felt like it was a pretty lean year in regards to free agency at that position, just relatively speaking. But there is depth in the draft.
When there's a deep position in the draft, maybe take quarterbacks off the board. Does it affect how you approach thinking about getting one? Oh well, maybe in the second or third. That sort of
Yeah,
thing.
when you're kind of putting this cube together, part of it is understanding what's available in the draft, or what do the odds suggest. It's deep at interior defensive line, for instance. Those things can affect maybe what you do in free agency, and you're looking to click the last click and have it all fit and get the most out of the players you sign or draft. So it would be important to know, as we're making free agent decisions, where the draft is depth-wise at certain positions. That I do think exists.
So how do you feel
Reportedly, the Niners were highly aggressive in trying to retain Trent Greenlaw, even after agreed to terms with you guys. Is that all fair? In free agency?
It's their player
Yeah.
at that time.
So it's that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, for us, nothing can happen until that Wednesday time frame. And so, man, I'm glad he chose us.
Are you aware in the moment that he agreed with us, but
No, the only discussions that are being had at that time are agent to GM. No, like I said, I'm just glad when the decision was finalized. You wait on a few of these guys, and you don't know all the specifics, but those guys are excited about being in Denver.
He's coming off the Achilles.
Yep.
He plays basically one half of football. Are you at all surprised at the level of competition that you had to sign him?
We thought he was going to be highly sought after. In other words, I think the injuries maybe played a little part as to how he became a free agent. Otherwise, he doesn't ever hit the free agent market. He's someone that's contract is redone. So I don't think I should say nothing surprises you anymore, but we felt like there would be. These guys are young players when you look at their pitch count and their age, and then you study the injuries themselves. I wasn't really surprised that there would be other teams that heavily involved.
Does that have a reflection on the depth of the draft at that inside linebacker
I would
position?
say it's a fair question. I think it's a little bit harder. I don't know that it's draft related. I think it's a little bit harder to say we found our starting inside backer, whether it's a Mike or Will. It's harder to say that about a rookie. There's certain positions that, and that's not to say that a rookie can't come in and do it, but I think it's harder to project that.
Those aren't considered necessarily like premium positions, quote unquote,
Correct.
inside linebacker and
Correct.
safety. But you're saying in terms of veteran presence, especially in the
Right.
middle of the defense,
Yeah.
there's some value in that.
Yeah, from a communication standpoint, I mean, you talked about it.
Yeah.
Part of the middle of the defense was DJ.
Yep.
Right behind him, Trey and Fonga. Right through the middle of our defense, getting tough. And look, the irony is DJ shared a locker room with these guys and knows them very well. And so from a leadership and a football IQ standpoint, that was important.
It's important to have all three of those guys kind of feel like they should have an easy adjustment period.
Yeah, I think so. I think anytime It depends on the player. I think, look, the transition always is significant, and yet I think these guys will have a familiarity with certainly some teammates, and then also whether it be coaches. There always seems to be a couple ties in each staff. But we were excited on Wednesday. I'll be honest with you. We felt we got better.
Coach, going back to Ingram, how can he help Bo take that next step? And as you look at Bo, where do you want him to grow going into year 2?
Well, I think, look, we've talked about it for 2 years now. The interior triangle of your passing game, the tight end, the running back, the third receiver. You know, when you're seeing a lot of these coverage shell looks, you know, those positions have to thrive. So the very logistical answer to your question is Ingram's closer to Bo than the receivers sometimes. The matchups inside, I think, I just think, man, it's hard to play that position if you're not able to attack the interior triangle of some of the looks we're getting defensively. This, I think, helps Bo.
Sean,
Go ahead.
how reaffirming is it though that Greenlaw was so popular and his team did want him back, even if it wasn't the standard way to keep a guy, and Ingram goes and visits somewhere else and chooses you guys?
Yeah, all good. I think we're a team players want to play for. I think certainly we're a city that I think that's very appealing to athletes to want to live, and I think a lot of that is a result of maybe some of the early success we had last year with the young quarterback.
What do you think of the proposed rule change that would reseed team sector?
So how many owners' meetings is this for you?
This is my third.
All right, so I'm in the 20s. This is probably the third time. Every 6 years this topic comes up. We'll be talking about it 6 years from now, hopefully. It came up. Look, I was in New Orleans in 2010. We had, I think, an 11-win team. Went to Seattle to play a 7-win team. When you actually study the results of that matchup, let's just say 500 or below, playing at home, it's about 50-50 or, so to answer your question, I think winning the division is important. I like how our playoff format is laid out, especially compared to any other sport. So again, this is the third go round of this topic. It'll continue to repeat itself, but I think we would vote against the reseeding.
I would say to Kellen Moore's introductory presser was asked about parallel between